Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Necromaniacs. It's once again, it's me and my co-host Mike Scandato. How's it going, Mike?
Going well, Mike. What's going on, everybody? As Mike said, you're listening to the Necromaniacs podcast, coming at you every Thursday. I am doing good. It is March 1st when we recorded this puppy. Winter is, I think, coming to an end. But, well, there's other things happening in the world, Mike Hill, to say the very least, huh?
Yeah. It's. I think you and I were talking about this at Cannibal Corpse last week about how nuclear annihilation is no longer off the table like it was maybe a few months ago. You know.
And it's weird, Mike and I are of a certain age, and I'm late 40s ish. And we remember what it was like back in the 80s when, well, this was on the table then, in a different way, of course, than it is now. And I thought in my head I reached a point a while ago where I thought I would never even have to think about this again. Well, maybe that was premature of me. But look, I don't want to be all doom and gloom. You don't listen to this podcast for doom and gloom. But we would be remiss to not talk about what's going on. And, of course, we want to send all of our very best and our thoughts, our sincere thoughts, to the people of the Ukraine. And I'm also going to add to the people of Russia who wanted nothing to do with any of this. So I'm definitely going to add that.
I would also like to agree with that statement because it's apparent that the populace of Russia are not supporting this guy.
No,
and it's completely. This is just isn't how you do business in the 21st century. Like fucking Genghis Khan, rolling across Asia.
I know. I mean, it's so strange. Like I really thought I had reached a point in my adult life or in my life where this would have been something to just think about as of my childhood, right? But I guess we don't really live in that kind of world. I mean, I guess anything at any time is possible. And I mean, what can you do? Thankfully, we're doing this podcast in the safety of our homes and in an America that is rather safe for now, of course, knock on wood. But, I mean, you can't keep your head in the sand, and you have to kind of be at least a little conscious of what's going on. And again, like I said, honestly, I honestly want the listeners to come to this show for an escape, Mike. What do you think?
Absolutely. But we would be remiss in if we didn't say something about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. And there it is, folks. I mean, there are real life horrors, and there are the horrors that we enjoy when we watch the films. And it's a very unfortunate, sad situation that I really hope can get resolved, and I actually mean that sincerely. So yeah. Aside from that, Mike Hill, we went to see Cannibal Corpse last week, which was a lot of fun in Brooklyn, at Brooklyn Steel, huh?
That was amazing, man. It was so much fun. And Cannibal Corpse, they're just the kings of death metal, man.
100%. I mean, some may disagree, but I'm going to say that you might be wrong if you disagree. At least for American death metal, Cannibal Corpse are definitely the kings. I mean, they draw the most people. They sell the most records. They're the most recognizable. It's funny. Someone asked me how that, who's not a big death metal fan, somebody asked me how and why Cannibal Corpse. And I went, that's a good question. I think you can bring it all the way back to Ace Ventura is probably a starting point, Mike.
I was about to say that,
that's probably the starting point of where they kind of managed to spread their wings more than the average early 90s death metal band. They got tremendous exposure from that film. It's a huge film. It's still a huge film. It's a funny part of the movie. I would gather quite a few young metalheads found that band from that movie. Mike and I already knew who they were. Of course, before that movie, I was already a fan. I'd already seen them. My old band had played a show with them by then. So I was on board, and I was kind of happy to see it. But after that, honestly, I would also say was, they lose Chris Barnes and they gain George Fisher, but they don't miss a beat. They churn out records every single year. They tour the world constantly. There are no breakups. There are no sellouts. But another milestone, they got a pretty big rub, I think, from the Death Clock cartoon. Mike, what do you think?
I agree. Yeah, because I obviously Death Clock, is like kind of modeled after Cannibal Corpse. Specifically.
In a weird way. It's at least the singer is kind of sort of like
Yeah,
a George Fisher, right?
Yeah,
Like,
he's like a corpse grinder kind of guy.
right. I mean, and then that's another rub. I mean, again, they've also benefited from being on the very same record label their entire existence, who has promoted the shit out of them and believed in them. They made the moves and had the blessings that I don't think other death metal bands in the early '90s did. Mike, that's it. What do you think?
Yeah, and also just the work ethic too, man.
The work.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think they're. I would say they're kind of like the Iron Maiden of death metal. You know what I mean? You know how like Iron Maiden are just like total professionals and are just have a vision, and they stick to this vision and they're always touring and they're always like, they're always putting it together. And I think that's like, writing great songs, work ethic and professionalism. And I think that's, and then a couple, obviously a couple of good breaks, but,
Sure.
But nothing, nothing. It's not like, oh, they're lucky. No, they're not lucky.
No, I would never use the word lucky. They lucked out. I would never say that.
No.
They've had lineup changes. They had, they had the one big singer change.
Yeah.
They've had guitarist issues. The two mainstays being, Alex Webster and Paul the drum, the same bassist and drummer since the jump.
But just the bass player like Iron Maiden,
Yeah, he's the Steve Harris. Yeah,
Yep.
Alex Webster is definitely that guy. But yeah, so that's kind of how I broke it down to the person who asked me that, why Cannibal Corpse? Why are they so big and blah blah blah? And he's like, oh, okay. At least that's my take. Listeners, you tell me what you think if you're a Cannibal Corpse fan. But yeah, the show was great. I mean, it was at a cool club. The club is tremendous. There was a shit ton of people there. Mike and I were not big fans of the direct support Whitechapel. Not really our cup of tea, but I will say quite a few people were there for them. It almost seemed. I mean, they did great, right? I mean,
I would say that Whitechapel is probably the biggest band in that genre that they're in, the deathcore genre.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're probably like the top band in that world.
Yeah, or like that new era that is kind of hard to classify. Like it's kind of extreme, but it's not really extreme enough for me. And it mixes clean singing and, it's got a lot of new metal attributes. That's, these are the reasons I'm probably not that into it, but they're huge. I mean, actually, I looked at their Facebook. They've got like over like 1 million likes, and some people may not put a lot of faith into that, but believe me, in the music industry, having over 1 million followers is a big deal. So yeah, a lot of people were there for them, and of course they're actually on the same record label as Cannibal Corpse, Metal Blade. So
I mean, Revocation too is also a Metal Blade. So like,
there you go.
I don't know anything about the first band. I've never heard of them before.
We missed them. So, unfortunately, but it was great to see our friends there, and a lot of familiar faces, and it felt pretty like normal, right, Mike?
I would say so. Yeah. No, I didn't feel unusual. I mean, I still have a little bit of anxiety. I wouldn't even say it's anxiety. It's like when you haven't done something for a long time and suddenly you're doing it again. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I mean, we used to go to shows all the time, and now I will be going to a lot of shows. There's tons of stuff coming up. I got tickets to Immolation, Watain, Mayhem, this weekend Dead Guys playing out here in Jersey, going to that.
Nice.
So I'm going to get accustomed to being out again, which is good, and of course we're going on tour this spring, so that's going to be great. And,
Yeah, that's great.
yeah, so, but I'm still like a little, it's a little, I'm like, I guess out of practice of going to shows. You know what I mean? So,
I
but
hear you.
looking to change that though.
Yeah, totally. I started going to shows like almost immediately last April, May, and I've been to a few. And the interesting thing about this one was that I would say like 85 to 90% of the crowd was not wearing masks, which I think is actually a good thing at this point. I feel like we're in a much better place with that. But of course, if you still want to wear a mask, go right ahead.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, totally.
I am over with that part of my life. Um, I mean, I'm going to a show this week. I'm going to see Wayfarer at St. Vitus. That should be fun.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
totally, man.
with Artificial Brain.
Oh, nice.
Cool
Yeah, those
show.
guys are sick.
Yeah, yeah, that should be a good time. But yeah, hopefully you listeners are out there, checking out shows when you can, metal and hardcore, and trying to get a little more semblance of normalcy in your lives, which is good. And while you're doing that, of course, watching great horror on television and in your Blu-ray players and on your streaming services. But with that, what have you been checking anything out, Mike? What have you been checking
I
out?
did. I saw a new show called Severance.
Okay.
Have you heard of it? It's on Apple, and it's like a very weird, more science fiction, but
Hmm.
it's got Ben Stiller like directed it. It's got that dude Adam Scott who played in Eastbound and Down, but he's playing like a dramatic role in this one.
Okay.
Yeah, it's got Christopher Walken is in it,
Oh wow. Hmm.
and Patricia Arquette.
You know what sucks? Apple is literally the only streaming service I don't have, and I'm not even joking. So I would like to see it because I really liked 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I saw that news, whatever the hell it's called, the one with the dude from The Office and Jennifer Aniston, and
Oh yeah, I forgot
yeah,
the name of
that
that
show
one.
was actually really good. The first season of that was really fucking good, and I know there's a second season, so I'm gonna have to find my way into getting a 430th streaming service on my television. Um, but that does sound interesting. In the O's, there was a UK horror movie called Severance. Do you
Yeah,
remember that?
yep, I did. That was a good movie.
Okay.
Someone recommended it to me online. Actually, it was Brandon Legion was the one who told me about it, and I thought he was talking about the film, and I was like, oh yeah, I've seen that. But he's like, no, there's a new series, and he's like, I highly recommend it. It's very dystopian, future, like kind of like technocracy kind of vibe, where it's interesting. It's like a Philip K. Dick sort of story.
Hmm. That's cool. Yeah, I may check that out. Like I said, if I fucking get it, Apple, but we will see. Um, Speaking of streaming stuff, some cool news today. Shutter dropped their March schedule, and it's a bevy of Necromaniacs favorites, Mike Hill.
Yeah, you shared some of that with me, man, and I'm really excited about Trouble Every Day. That's like a relatively obscure movie by Claire Denis.
Yes, yes. Hint, hint, listeners. Trouble Every Day. But aside from Trouble Every Day, they dropped Inside and
Nice,
Martyrs
nice.
and a few. I think there's like one or two other French Euro ones from that era that they dropped that I haven't even seen. Actually, somebody was talking about some of them on the horror nerd discussion group in Facebook. So I want to check some of those out too. But if you have not seen a bunch of the French extreme films that we've talked about on the show, or you haven't seen them in a long time, Shudder just loaded up and grabbed nearly all of them. So knock yourselves out. They even got Irreversible up there, so I'm pretty stoked.
That was an exciting time, man. Like in the late '90s, like early O's.
Early O's, yeah. Oh, totally.
Like there was all these really cool films coming out from France. Like I think you and I like were really into those back then, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it was exciting because it was like, oh, there's this like really extreme stuff coming out of Europe. It's France is making these movies. There's the one Belgian film Calvaire, which was really good.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, there's one on there called Le Vide, which again I have not heard of, from Alexandre Bustillo and Julian Maury. Familiar names. Um, we've got Inside on there, like I said. We've got Martyrs. We've got Frontiers on there. That's a fucked up movie.
Oh yeah, man. Yep.
Trouble Every Day. Another movie unfamiliar with, Bastards. Sounds very interesting. A film by Claire Denis. Got to check that out, Mike. Yeah. So Shudder. I know a lot of our listeners have Shudder, and they'll be checking out these movies. Want to get into the plugs real fast. Make sure you are listening every Friday to our buddies over at Break the Apocalypse podcast. Great, fun show, comedy, politics, social stuff. Please check out Break the Apocalypse. And of course, our buddy Brandon Legion, Horror Wolf 666. What day does that come out, Mike?
Tuesdays, I believe.
Tuesdays, yes. So you've got a whole week to enjoy lots of fun stuff. And also on Fridays, Agitators Anonymous. A little plug for those guys. Alan Averill from Primordial. Got to check that out. And Into the Necrosphere, folks, for all of your black metal needs. Right, Michael?
Yeah, that's a great show. I really enjoy that one. That one comes out on Tuesday. I think actually I got the days fucked up. Jackie comes out on Tuesday. Brandon comes out on Monday.
Excellent. Okay, cool. Very good. Lots of great stuff to listen to aside from, of course, Necromaniacs podcast, which you should have as your top priority, right, Mike?
I agree. I put that as number one, man.
Yes.
First thing in the morning every Thursday. Rock this podcast.
And I'm going to plug Mike Hill's Everything Went Black podcast because Mike forgets to plug that.
You know, I should be better at that, actually.
Yeah, you should. Yeah. You should. You definitely should. But tonight, listeners, we're going back to New Jersey, right, Mike?
That's right. Or I'm staying in New Jersey, and
Mike is staying in New Jersey. The show is going back to New Jersey with what I think is probably one of the best of the American gialli, and of course, I'm talking about the 1976 film Alice, Sweet Alice, directed by Alfred Sole. Film was originally titled Communion, and it was shot under the name Communion. And of course, if you're a fan of Necromaniacs podcast or movies that we cover, you know that happens a lot. The movies get shot with different names, then they come out with the name, and then probably somewhere along the way it gets yet another name or two. But this movie had one name, Communion, and we all know it basically as Alice, Sweet Alice. It stars Linda Miller, Paula Shepherd, and the film debut, a very young Brooke Shields. Set in 1961, New Jersey, the film focuses on a troubled adolescent girl who becomes a suspect in the brutal murder of her younger sister during her first communion in a church, as well as a series of unsolved stabbings that follow. Listeners, a little interesting note about the cast. Linda Miller, who plays the mother, is none other than the daughter of Jackie Gleason of the Honeymooners fame. How about that? Also, her husband is none other than Jason Miller from The Friggin' Exorcist.
Father Damien,
yes. And their son is none other than actor Jason Patrick from The Lost Boys. How cool is that, Mike?
That's pretty awesome. And I have to say that Father Damien is like, he almost makes being a Catholic priest cool.
But yeah, a lot of people were unaware of that, actually. And I feel like that's like something like only like the real kind of movie nerds would know, or people, really paying attention to the cast. I mean, I guess this movie is really more about the children than the adults, but although she features, quite heavily in the movie, the mother, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's she's like one of the key parts of the film, really.
Mm-hmm. Of course. This movie, it's funny. Mike and I were talking about this before we started rolling. It's a movie that if you just blindly put on with none of these facts about it being shot in New Jersey and that it's an American film, that you might have thought it was either an Italian or European film of the giallo era. That's what me and Mike have come to that conclusion, because it just has this the look and the way the actors kind of look and just the general vibe of this movie to me is European, Mike.
Well, yeah. I mean, even they even look like Italian actors.
Hmm.
Linda Miller looks like the Italian actress in a giallo
Yeah,
film.
yeah.
You know,
Well, she's Italian American for sure, but no, totally, totally. But no, listeners, it is 100% American, 100% New Jersey. Um, and director Alfred Sole had says, has said many times over the years that he had no Italian or European inspirations when making this film. His main inspirations were the films of Alfred Hitchcock and the film Don't Look Now, which is a movie I've always wanted us to actually cover on the show, Mike.
yeah, I'd be down for that. I think that's on Shudder too, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a Donald Sutherland, Julie Christie film from the early 70s. It's a creeper. It's a cool movie, actually. And I could see how, it definitely inspired a lot of films that came after it in the genre. But another reason this gets put, into the kind of the American Giallo tagline has to do with the killer and the killings itself. It's definitely quite the whodunit. It involves a masked killer, not necessarily a gloved killer, but there's quite a few red herrings. Fairly decent sized body count, and again, it has that vibe. It has the vibe of some of the other films we've covered on the show. I mean, maybe not completely in line with, say, Body Double or Cruising or Dress to Kill, but I think it belongs in that family, Mike.
Yeah, for sure, man. And it also has these like kind of disturbing, like offbeat characters.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm referring to the landlord,
Yes.
Mr. Alfonso.
Mr. Alfonso. Listeners, if you see this movie for the first time, you're probably never going to forget this character. He is this tremendous man who lives in the same building as Alice and her family. This kind of like 7 family, mini apartment building kind of house. And he's a creeper. He's a bit of a pedo, but he's like the size of like a truck, basically.
Yeah,
I mean, he's a very large man.
Yeah.
And he has all these cats in his apartment, and he's like, his clothes are dirty. But the really weird thing is, Mike, he's very well spoken and smart.
Well, I wanted to mention that too, because like Alfonso de Noble, the guy who plays
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Alfonso, apparently he was like a stage actor.
Not a surprise.
Yeah, so
Not a surprise.
he's like very well spoken, and he's an actor. He's a stage actor, so that's why I think he comes off like that.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, despite the fact that he's playing this kind of dastardly dark character, his acting chops like totally kind of shine through, and I could totally see that the guy was a damn stage actor. Now that you're saying it.
Yeah. So this movie actually, it's a little bit on the long side too. It's 108 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
and the budget was $350,000.
Yeah.
Now I know this is 1976, money, but
Mhm.
that does seem a little light, though, doesn't it?
It does seem a little light. I mean, but here's the thing. I would say, I mean, a lot of it was shot. I mean, it's not like they traveled many places to shoot this movie. I could see how that money was stretched to be maybe just about enough, but I guess I see your point. I mean, there's the practical special effects, and they basically kind of travel all over different parts of Jersey to shoot this movie. I don't think there's anything in New York City, though. Apparently, a lot of the cast and crew were all New York City people. It says on the Wikipedia page. Cool side note is I have the Arrow deluxe Blu-ray of this, and one of the cool features on it is they show you all the locations in Jersey.
Oh wow,
You get a tour of their shooting locations with the guy Michael Gingold, who used to work for Fangoria. Um, a lot of places kind of still stand. The actual house still stands, where they shot the interiors elsewhere, but the exterior house, like the house where the family lives, is still there. But a lot of other places are gone, like the church is gone and things like that. But there's a lot of cool scenery that is exactly the same. That's why I like getting these Blu-rays, folks. You get to see all this cool shit. And it also comes with a really cool booklet in like the first batch, where they kind of talk about the kind of, a little bit about the giallo thing. And it also kind of talks about how this movie is a bit kind of hard to place. And I just want to read a little bit that this guy Michael Blythe said. It says, Alice Sweet Alice, 1976 film, is a hard film to place. Some claim it to be a formative slasher predating John Carpenter's genre-defining Halloween in 1978 by a few years. It shares more in common, though, with giallo tradition, which dominated Italian cinema in the 70s. A case could also be made that Alfred Sole's religious shocker, with its symbolic relation between devout Catholicism and brutal violence, sits more comfortably alongside the holy horrors of The Exorcist in 1973 and The Omen in 1976. And then, meanwhile, there are those who view the film's allegorical psychodrama as a macabre meditation on familial grief reminiscent of Don't Look Now, 1973. The truth is, Alice Sweet Alice is all of these things and more. Mysterious and elusive as the titular Moppet herself, Sole's film is almost impossible to pin down, a fact that makes it so endlessly fascinating and, in its own perverse way, so bracingly singular. What do you think about that?
I agree with most of that. I do not put this in like the same classification as like The Omen or The Exorcist, because there's no Satan, there's no supernatural element to this. But
Right.
all the Catholic iconography it's its own thing. It doesn't necessarily make it part of like that whole trip with like The Omen and all that. I think I'm surprised that a guy, like, once again, I'm surprised this is not an Italian film, because that's such like an Italian American experience, the Roman Catholic Church.
Well, yeah, it draws on. I mean, look, I almost feel like if something is made in the 70s and it's made in New York, New Jersey, whatever, and there's a big religious Catholic bent to it, you can't take, Italians out of it. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's
That's
like
true.
there,
Yeah.
it's kind of in the DNA. But yeah, I do like the fact that this movie, it kind of rolls up a lot of different things. I mean, yes, sure, it's a slasher. And it is, interestingly enough, several years before Halloween.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, for sure. Yeah.
And it's made literally right around the same time, right after Black Christmas. But again, I just think, look, a lot of these directors who are coincidentally, the American ones in particular, coincidentally get the giallo thing thrown around. I think 98% of the time, yes, it is just coincidentally like that. Mainly because these guys didn't see these movies yet. These movies were not really happening in America just yet. There were no VHS copies of, in the 70s of these movies. The only way you could have seen some of these movies were maybe the Bava and maybe the Argento ones in major cities for a brief moment. And maybe not, because not all those movies made it over, you know? But I just think it was something in the air and in the DNA of the 70s. If you were making a thriller, it just, I don't know. I just think it's not so much that, hey, let's copy the Italians. I just think it's no, we're all kind of the same ilk. We're all inspired by Hitchcock, actually. We're all inspired by, darkness and dark shit and the shit of the 70s. What do you think?
Yeah, that's a good point that you made. It is kind of like this like a coincidence, really. But I would never have thought that. I would have, like I said, when I rewatched this movie, I was sitting there and I'm like, man, something, like if I didn't know anything about this film, I would assume this was dubbed. This was like I was watching a film.
It has that vibe. It really does.
Made in Italy with dubbed English or something, because everyone looked Italian. The film, the way it looked. The actors, like even the guy who plays Dom, The guy's not. His name is Niles McMaster, but he looks
I
like a
tell you,
guy from like these Italian giallo films. He has like that European Italo like vibe, you know.
the most Argento moment of the movie to me is the scene where the aunt almost gets killed,
Yeah,
where she's screaming. The blood is all over the place. It's pouring, raining out, and there's that blood on the sidewalk and on the steps, and she's screaming like a banshee. It almost reminds me of the fucking scene in Tenebrae at the end.
sure.
With the arm, well, not at the end. I forget what point. You know what I'm talking about? Where
Yeah,
the
yeah,
girl gets her
for sure.
arm cut off. Right, right. But again, I mean, this is 76. That's 1982. But those, you know, it's there. Like it's there, whether it's accidental or not. I feel like it's there, and it's just very interesting to notice it.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about some of the plot elements in this story.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And so you know, we mentioned that Brooke Shields. This is like her film debut, but
Mhm.
she's only in for like the beginning of the film.
About
So
20 minutes, 15 minutes. Yeah.
yeah, so we have a family. You know, Catherine, played by Linda Miller, and
Mhm.
her they're in the middle of a separation with her husband, and
Mhm.
there's two daughters. There's Alice, I mean, who obviously, you know, the namesake of the title,
Yep.
and
Paul Shepard,
and Karen, which is played by
Brooke
Brooke
Shields.
Shields. Yeah, it opens up. There's her communion, and she's fucking murdered at her communion
Yeah.
in
Wild.
in this. The murderer is wearing a yellow raincoat and this like really creepy mask.
The same raincoat that Alice wears all the time, mind you.
Yeah.
Her younger sister. Mhm.
Yeah. So, you know, there's that, you know, they lead you down this path thinking that, that Alice is the murderer. And,
Yes.
you know, she is a bit of, a handful, shall we say.
Yeah. Now, honestly, look, when I first saw this movie, I forget how long ago, I rewatched it this week. A part of me was like, oh, yeah, this girl's the killer. You know, I was like, it's highly possible this girl murdered her sister. She's kind of witchy, as they say. She's kind of nasty. She's a bit of a bully to her sister. She's a little weird. She keeps weird stuff in the basement and like insects in a jar. She's a little off, Alice, Mike, right?
She's precocious.
She's precocious.
Yeah.
However, she was in the actual church getting the communion at the time of the murder. So, you know, while there is someone walking around looking like her, so to speak, doing the killings, you kind of realize that no, it can't be her. Like you know what I'm saying? Like or at least she didn't kill her sister at the very least at the
Right.
beginning
Yeah.
scene.
Yeah.
She wasn't in the same room, so there's that. But yeah, very disturbing scene. You know, the whole movie itself is a bit disturbing, and it's funny. There are the depictions of course, Roman Catholicism, but also at the core of this movie has to do with, I think, you know, the child neglect, number two, and the disintegration of the American nuclear family. Because
Yeah.
this is 1961. This is happening, mind you. Her parents are getting a divorce,
Which is like
Nobody's getting
unheard of
divorced.
back then.
It
Unheard of.
was super rare, very rare, especially in like Patterson, New Jersey, in a Catholic town or whatever. Very, very not cool, Mike. Let's just say not cool.
And that comes back, and there's a scene which I want to talk about when we discover who the actual killer is, and
Yes.
the whole motivation of this you know, outburst of murder and you know, mayhem has to do with morality and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah, I mean, so look, the death of the daughter Karen, Brooke Shields, shakes the family and fucks the family up, and the family's very tight knit. Aside from there's, you know, the mother played by Linda Miller, there's her husband, you know, on the outs. Then there is a sister, her sister Annie, played by Jane Lowry, and then her husband. And then we have a priest who figures very heavy in the film, Mike. Um, what is his name? Trying to find his name. Oh, Father Tom,
Yeah, Father
Rudolph
Tom. Yep.
Willrich.
Yep.
Yes, he looks familiar actually for some reason to me. But that's the thing. Like you kind of see like the ripple effect of what has taken place after the murder and how it affects everybody. And even the creepy neighbor downstairs that we mentioned says a weird thing about the death, right? About you go into the ground, or like he says something very strange about the death of a fucking 10-year-old girl.
Yeah, he even says something to the effect of like, it's too bad that Alice, you weren't the one that died, or something along
Yes, yeah,
those
he
lines
hates
too.
Alice, right? Because
Yeah,
Alice kind of is abusive to this guy,
yeah.
and
Alice
he
tortures
calls
her.
him fatty all the time. I mean, I laughed out loud when she hands him the cake and goes, "Here you go, fatty." I was dying. I was fucking dying in my apartment when she did that.
Now, the one
Um,
character we have not mentioned yet is
mhm.
Mrs. Tredoni,
Oh yes,
and she's a pivotal part of this saga that we're talking about tonight.
yes, she works with the priest, correct?
Father Tom, yes, she basically takes care of him, does his cleaning and cooking and all that kind of stuff, and lives there in the rectory with him.
Right. She's a very, let's just say, traditionalist, old school Catholic. And Mrs. Tridani is kind of taking all this in, this divorce, this murder. You got the pervert guy downstairs. And let's just say she's watching very closely. Not into it, Mike. She's not into any of all this that's happening. And
Judging,
yes,
observing, judging.
judging and observing. Yes.
Yes. Now, let me ask you a question. How old was Alice supposed to be in this film?
Let's see. 12, because Karen is 9.
Okay.
Alice is 12, yeah. And Brooke Shields' characters are like 9. Mhm.
Now,
Pretty young.
yes, very young. What's real creepy and uncomfortable about this movie is in a way, they kind of sexualize her.
Yes. I would agree with that.
And that's kind of like a thing from the 70s, you know?
Well, it's funny you say that because, okay, Brooke Shields shoots this movie. She's, I believe, 10, okay? And this is her first movie. The second movie she makes, she's freaking nude in it at 12.
Yes, that's a Pretty Baby, I believe.
Yes. Now, from what I understand, her mom or dad, like both her parents, whatever, they were all there and yada, yada, yada. And things were done to prevent any kind of whatever. But that doesn't change the fact that she's 12 and naked in a movie, right? I mean, come on.
Yeah, that's definitely. If I had children, if I had a daughter, I don't think I would be down with that, having her nude
No.
in a film.
But if there's one thing we know, listeners, is that in the 70s, as we've said before, it was the Wild West out there.
And I also want to mention that 1976, The Little Girl Who Lives Down the Lane, which we covered a little while ago, also came out, and we had a Jodie Foster, being sexually hassled in that movie too.
Yeah, and a fake nude scene from her. It was an adult woman's body. That was the strangest nude scene ever. That
was funny because like that nude scene didn't even need to be in the film really. But
no,
they just figured they grabbed some like stripper to like be the body double. That's kind of what you look like though, or some. It
was a fully grown woman's body, like you said. Weird. And like the back portion, like you see like this big back, and it's like that's not Jodie Foster. It's like, what is that? But anyway, this movie of note, there is no nudity in the film, but I will agree with you, Mike, that there is a bit of a sexualization going on of the characters, and it's unfortunate, but I mean, I've all but given up as trying to figure out some aspects of the 70s at this point. I mean, it's just these things were just done until they couldn't be done in the 80s, right?
Yeah, and the character of Mr. Alfonso, like there's a moment where you think he's going to actually molest her,
Yeah, it gets dangerously close, and then, oh boy, Alice picks up one of his kittens and grabs it by the neck and slams it to the floor, killing it. We don't see that, thankfully, but we do see her grabbing, which, for God's sake, I hope was a fake kitten, and throwing it to the ground. We don't see it hit the ground, but he screams out, "You killed her," or whatever. That was quite a little moment in the movie. Very, very 70s moment.
Yeah, animal cruelty is definitely another big 70s
But
thing.
no, I don't think it was. I'm almost certain it was a fake, because there's never been any word on the street about any animals dying in this movie. So hopefully,
Yeah, yeah.
God, it's not Cannibal Holocaust just yet. Goodness gracious. But the thing is this, other murders start happening, or attempted murders start happening. And again, as you're viewing them happen, you see what now here's something that kind of trips you up a little, trip me up. You kind of see what looks to be a little person doing it, or are you thinking it's a smaller person doing it? You know what I mean?
Well, that's where I get tripped up too, because it's consistent with the size of Alice. You know what I mean?
Yes. We see this, rain-coated, masked, knife-wielding figure go after the Aunt Annie, and stabs her up in the hallway. After this is after the death of the sister, and a little bit of time has passed. I feel like it's almost the same week, actually. The Aunt survives, but the Aunt is insistent that it was Alice, right?
Yes, and that's
Because of
where
the raincoat.
Yep.
and but again, we come to find that no, Alice at that moment was downstairs hiding, right, in like the basement of the building or something.
Right.
Like she wasn't there, and they start to think Alice is potentially a murderer, but really they also think she's just kind of nuts, right? They bring her to a hospital, and they realize something is off with her, and there's all this shit going on between the parents and then the priest, and it's just things start happening, ramping up rather quickly. They sent Alice to a psychiatric institution for evaluation. Also, Mr. Alfonso, a little later in the film, meets his own fate. The thing is this: as you're watching it, you think, hey, maybe Alice is doing this. I mean, because like you said, it is kind of consistent with her form, right?
Yeah, and then you kind of think, well, maybe there's two people doing the murders or something like that.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes. The thing is, the Dominic guy, what do you call it? The dad, basically, right? Isn't that her father?
Yeah, he's the ex-husband of Catherine. Yeah.
Yeah. He kind of gets lured out via a phone call to this abandoned building, and he gets, oh man, this scene also kind of again very Argento-y, no? Like his murder, right?
Well, before we say anything about that, would you meet someone out at some abandoned building to if someone called you up and they're like, "Hey, meet me down at this vacant
right at
lot."
the funeral, like at the funeral of a little girl, he gets a weird phone call. Yeah, I don't know if I would, I don't think I would do that.
The next time we go to a show, I'm going to have you meet me at a vacant lot somewhere at midnight, and then we'll go to the show.
Yeah, he gets a phone call claiming to be Annie's daughter, Angela. Annie being the aunt who is now in the hospital from getting knifed up. Saying that she has Karen's crucifix. Karen, of course, Brooke Shields, who is also now dead. I mean, yeah, it's a bit of a stretch, to do that. And, spoiler alert, this movie is, 800 years old. We're going to kind of get into the killer on this time around, folks. Although lately we have not been. I feel like we have to for this one. the killer starts stabbing him and tying him up, and you're thinking to yourself, nope, can't be Alice. Alice is in a mental hospital right now. This is not Alice doing this. Alice would not be able to tie up and knife
Her father.
Her father.
Yeah.
Number two, we learn that the killer is in fact Mrs. Tridani, who works at the rectory with the priest, played by actress Mildred Clinton. She is basically disgusted by this whole Spages family. She's disgusted by their the divorce and the daughters and all the fucked up shit she sees around her. And she's basically decided to take it out on this poor fucking family. She ends up tying up the father, knifing him up, and throwing him from this, building. Pretty fucked up scene.
It's definitely an Argento killing for sure.
Yeah. Oh, and before she does it, she does in fact take the necklace that belonged to little Brooke Shields and shoves it into the guy's mouth. Again, very, very Italian.
It's like it's almost that the revealing of her is almost like a Scooby-Doo kind of like moment, really. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Where it's like it's Miss Fredoni, Tridoni. It's like,
Mrs. Tridani. Yeah.
Mrs. Tridoni.
And unlikely, I have to say, kind of an unlikely person to do this, but I guess not really. She is filled with religious fervor, not unlike the character in what do you call it? Our favorite movie TV show of last year. What's her name? The crazy lady who worked at the church.
Oh yeah, yeah. From Black Mass.
Yes, from Black Mass.
Mm-hmm.
No, definitely in line with her, right?
Now, one other aspect about Miss Tridoni is that her own daughter died on her first communion.
Yes.
So, more connections with psychosis and the decline of the family. Like she lost her daughter, and my feeling is like that she never recovered from that.
No.
And she just like submerged herself in religion. Obviously she works at the rectory with Father Tom, and all of the the Catholic rhetoric of morality and like divorce is a taboo and this and that, and when she's killing Dom, she even is saying something about you and your whores or something like that. I believe
your whore wife or
your
whatever.
Whore wife, and it's like so there you go. It's like this lady's off the deep end from losing her kid. Like she's like, I'm going to kill your daughter because my daughter died on her first communion. You deserve this. It's the sins of, the parents that, get
right.
So it's like this real like Old Testament style shit that's going on. You know what I mean?
So, Father Tom tells Catherine that Dom has died. And during Dominic's autopsy, they find Karen's crucifix in his mouth, which kind of eliminates Alice as the suspect.
Right.
I mean, for a multitude of reasons, because, come on already. She didn't kill anybody. So they grab Catherine from the institution, Father Tom. They grab Alice from the institution, Father Tom and her mother. This poor kid is now down to just her and the mom, Mike. She's lost her sister. She's lost her father. Tridani then goes into the apartment building and kills Mr. Alfonso. But not before Alice, of course, has played again, Alice is sketch as hell, though. Let's be honest here. She's a bit sketch. She puts a jar of cockroaches on him while he's sleeping, that she's been hiding down in the basement.
That was like the most. That was like such a creepy moment, man. Because like I used to have roaches like that in my apartment at Greenpoint, man.
Oh my God! Wow,
dude, they would show up every summer, man.
Oof.
Crawl out of the drains and stuff like that.
Brutal shit. So yeah, he wakes up screaming, and Tridani is in the staircase, and he opens the door, and she fucking she knifes him up. And she runs out of there. The thing is, one of the detectives sees Tridani running out of there without a mask on. So they all know what the fuck is going on at this point. Right?
At this stage, yeah, they know who the killer is.
Yeah. She runs to the church, Tridani, where the police are stationed. Um, and there's like a mass going on, of course, and she manages to fucking kill Father Tom because he denies giving her communion because they're trying to, they're trying to like fucking arrest her finally. You know what I'm saying? She stabs him right in the throat as the cops rush in, and he bleeds to death. And there's all this commotion. Like the movie's pretty much at its very end at this point. But of course, we cut to Alice, walking down the main aisle of the church, headed towards the front of the church, whatever. They're in the midst of all this commotion, and she has the Tridani's bloody knife, and she puts it in a shopping bag, like it's like a keepsake. So it's like, yeah, there's definitely something up with Alice. Did she kill anybody? No. Is she seemingly not bothered by any of these murders? Yes. Right?
She's definitely deranged, man. Like, and once again, going back to the dissolution of the family, maybe like the divorce, like not having her father around, like,
Right.
the family falling apart. She's like, 12 years old. It's manifesting with her as being this kind of detached, like sociopath, because she has like these tendencies, man. She's like, torturing her sister. She's like, being kind of a temptress too with Mr. Alfonso.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, she's like a little of a tempting him somewhat, teasing him constantly. And she must know that he's a friggin' pedophile, like she must sense there's something wrong with him.
Weird. Interesting. A lot of people could view this as basically an anti-Catholic movie to a degree. There's an interesting comment. Sheila O'Malley from Film Comment. From one scene to the next, religious iconography overwhelms the screen. Paintings of Mary and Christ, marble statues, crosses on every wall, religion leering at the characters from behind. Parishioners kneel at the altar, pushing out fat tongues for communion, looking like a parade of aggressive Rolling Stones logos. Religion is not a refuge in Alice, Sweet Alice. It is a rejection of the body itself. But the body, its tongues, its teeth, its menstruation will not be denied. I'm going to say this is a fairly anti-Catholic movie, but I don't know. I mean, is it, or is it just that, I don't know. I feel like I've seen other movies that I would say, yeah, it's pretty anti-religion or anti-Catholic. I mean, this movie, is it just a thriller draped in Catholicism, but with all of its negative aspects? I mean, I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I mean, it's the Catholicism adds like a very good backdrop for this film, and it's definitely part of the narrative because, Mrs. Tridani is a zealot in some ways. She's overly Catholic. And that informs like a lot of her motivation for doing all this stuff has to be these you and your whore wife, and you can't, in the eyes of God, you can't get divorced, like all this stuff, you know what I mean? Around communion, around all these rituals that are part of the Catholic religion, and all these ideologies, and that's what drives her to become a murderer, and also with the knife. The Roman Catholic religion, the cross, it's like a fucking murder weapon, if you think about it, it's a torture device that they used to hang criminals on, so this knife is a weapon, it's a murder weapon. It's got blood on it, and that's the body when you take communion, it's the blood and the body of Christ, so blood and when she was saying that denies the body, the Catholic religion is very visceral, man. It's very like sensual in a lot of ways,
I agree.
You got Jesus Christ on the cross. He's got like a nice, he's like a swimmer's body. He's like ripped. You got this like ripped young man hanging on the cross. You know what I mean? It's like,
no, that's true. I mean, that was their interpretation of him. Back in the day.
Yeah.
Instead of a very darker skinned man,
Well,
which
yeah,
is what he
most
really looked
likely
like.
he
Yeah.
would be a Middle Eastern guy,
Yes,
because
he's definitely Middle Eastern.
it's
Yeah.
all in, in the middle, basically the Middle East,
Hmm.
but yeah, for a religion that wants you to be devout and very moral, it's almost like the religion itself is tempting you with all these like sensual sensual things, these like icons,
Wow.
blood and flesh and all this stuff.
It's funny. I mentioned earlier at the start of the show, folks, that this movie has two names. Well, the movie had four names, oddly enough. It premiered with the title Communion at the Chicago Film Festival in 1976. And even a book tie-in came out, which I've looked up on
Oh wow.
eBay, Communion by author Frank Loria, which came out in 1977, Bantam Books. However, North American distribution, they changed it from Communion to Alice Sweet Alice out of fear that the public would perceive it to be a Christian film. Allied artists revised Alice Sweet Alice, originated from a quote in volume 16 of the publications of the Catholic Truth Society. The ad, which read, "Then there is Alice, sweet Alice, your eldest born, who leans over the back of your chair and sweeps your face with her brown curls." So it came from some kind of religious tome.
Huh.
And then, sure enough, in some cities, like in Pensacola, Florida, it actually had the name The Mask Murders when it was screened down in Florida. And then for the fourth and final time, when this movie was released in 1981, it was called Holy Terror. So it
Oh,
had four
like
names.
integrity.
Yes, yes. So we have Communion, Alice Sweet Alice, The Mask Murders in some cities, and in some places, Holy Terror. How about that? So just like an Italian movie, Mike, it has a whole bunch of names.
Yeah. See, another tie in there.
Another Italian nod, accidental. Roger Ebert liked this movie. How about that? He gave it a favorable viewing. Alfred Sole has a brilliant touch for the macabre, and there are some splendidly chilling scenes. Us Magazine back in the day said it was a superior modern Gothic thriller. I could see that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it doesn't have a ton in common with our Dress to Kills and our Cruisins and our Body Doubles or Basic Instincts. But what it does have in common with that is that it has the Italian kind of weird Italian vibe and heart to it, although being a truly American film, right?
I don't even feel like it feels like an American film, honestly. Like I said, to me, it feels like so European,
Well, I don't know. I get that, but one could argue that it's also very Northeast Italian 70s, like, American Italian 70s. You know what I'm saying? Like, New York, New Jersey vibes.
No, I hear you, man. But like for me, like I'm going, like you remember in The Beyond,
Mm-hmm.
it was supposed to take place in Massachusetts.
No, New Orleans.
New Orleans. Sorry about
tiny
that.
bits of it were shot there. Tiny pieces.
Yeah.
Yes.
But it's like everyone in the film is Italian, like a European. Like it doesn't look like no one looks like they're from Louisiana. No one in that film.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
I almost feel like this is like that. It's like everyone looks European and acts European in this film, and I don't know. That's just my take on it. And to me, it doesn't feel like, I don't know. I mean, yeah, the Italian American thing, but it also feels very European to me.
Well, Ed Gonzalez of Slant Magazine agreed with you. He said in 2005, possibly the closest American relation to an American giallo. The film is head-trippingly hilarious and features some of the more disquieting set pieces you'll see in a horror film. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people really like this movie and gave it very high marks. Indie horror director Dante Tomaselli, who was actually, I believe, a cousin of Alfred Sole, in 2007, intended to do a remake of this movie with the script by Michael Gingold, who I mentioned earlier, who used to be for Fangoria. However, by 2016, Tomaselli revealed that the film was delayed due to lack of funds, and I think it was just abandoned out of financial reasons. Um, I don't know. I could see decent remake out of this. What do you think?
I kind of like it the way it is, man. I mean, yeah,
Yeah,
it could be cool, but like, why do that? It's perfect, I
true,
think.
true. Um, and it goes without saying that director Alfred Sole is no longer with us. He actually died about, let's see, November 15th, this February 15th, 2022, just a few weeks ago. Um, and this is his second film. It's worth noting that his first film is an adult feature, a porn film, 1972's Deep Sleep. Our friends over at the Rialto Report did a great podcast and feature on deep sleep and the history and, well, how much trouble it landed the late Alfred Sole, and so much so that he almost went to prison, and so did almost everyone who worked on the movie almost went to prison apparently. Um, Very interesting story about that, about how the movie kind of shook New Jersey when it was released, and it was like a very big deal. He was only he was like a young man, I believe, in his 20s when he made that movie. Um, Also, there's a documentary uh, online about the making of Deep Sleep that I also heard about only recently, but I want to check it out, Mike.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny we're talking about that. How, man, I kind of wish I was alive during the '70s. I mean, I was alive, but like old enough to do shit. Like living an
Yeah,
adult
yeah.
life in the '70s. Like, I wish I was an adult during that period.
I
It's,
know. I was born in 73, full disclosure. So, you know, while I was alive in the 70s, uh I was not of age to do anything all that great.
yeah,
You know, not that great. I have faint memories of actually, I do have faint memories of that Saturday Night Fever era and how it impacted my family at family parties, how big the Saturday Night Fever soundtrack was, and the Grease soundtrack. I have total memories of the impact of those movies. How about that?
yeah.
But I didn't,
Those were everywhere. They were like a
yeah,
very, very heavy influence on stuff in the '70s.
like those are two big 70s mental cornerstones, and a third 70s mental cornerstone is the death of Elvis, because I was five, but I remember my dad, God rest his soul, was crying. I think that was the first, one of the only times I ever witnessed. And I remember my mom crying. Like, I just remember the day. I don't know how I remember it, but I remember it. Ever have just these things from a very early age that you remember? That's one of them for me.
Absolutely, man. There's like the
Hmm.
weirdest stuff that pops into your head that you have these
Yeah.
very vivid memories of things that happened so long ago. Yeah.
So other than that, that's about all I remember from the 70s. I'm more of an 80s kid.
Well,
But
I've said this before. One of my earliest memories of watching a film was The Exorcist with my parents at a drive-in.
wow,
Yeah,
that's awesome.
that is kind of awesome.
Mm. Um, but listeners, this is a great fucking movie. If you have not seen it, you should see it. Again, if you're of the buying variety, you can get the really nice Blu-ray from Arrow. How did you view it, Mike?
You can rent it off of Prime, but
Hmm.
I actually also have a hard copy. I don't have the Arrow version that you have, that nice one though.
Okay. Yeah, it's on Prime. Apparently, it's on Tubi for
Oh,
free. But
okay.
again, I don't know if you're getting the real deal version on Tubi. I imagine you are. Um, but yeah, it is not on, Netflix, and it's not on Shutter. Uh, it's definitely worth the price of a rental if you're going to pay for the rental. 100%. I'll say that.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
totally.
and out of our scale of 1 to 5 on Necromaniacs podcast, I give this a very solid 4 with a bullet. What about you, Mike?
Coincidentally, I give it a strong 4.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
See, a
definitely.
lot of times Mike and I kind of nail it right on the head at the same time.
Yeah, no, this is one of the it's a film that I would use as an example to illustrate a certain type of film. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I hold this film in high regard.
I've seen some people online say it is the best American Giallo. I don't think it's the best American Giallo. I think it's one of. I'll put it as one of the best. I don't think it's the best one. Maybe that's just personal taste,
I
but
think
it's up there.
I think
It's a probably top five. I'll say that.
I'm gonna say Cruisin' is probably the best American giallo.
Mm. See, I'm almost of the mind to say Dress to Kill is actually, but Cruise. I on one day you might catch me saying it's Cruising. On another day you might say Dress to Kill. It kind of changes. I even have Basic Instinct in like a top mental five, probably. Honestly, I really like that movie. And I think it's just so like sleazy that people kind of forget how sleazy it is.
That's the
Because
old
it's like
Michael
1992.
Douglas and
Yeah,
Sharon
and
Stone,
Sharon
right?
Stone.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
that's a go-to man for that.
It is it's a great '90s movie. It's a great American Giallo, great thriller. You know, I like that movie.
Dude, there's when you said dressed Basic Instinct, all I imagine it's just like the scene where Michael Douglas goes into the disco and he's wearing
Yes.
that awful sweater with the V-neck.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
sweater
that's true.
sucks, man.
But he's Michael Douglas, so he's getting laid either way, bro. It's like 1992 Michael Douglas. You're going to the disco. You're meeting chicks. It doesn't really matter. I don't know, sweater or no sweater. You know, he was the man at that point. You know,
Yeah, totally, man.
he had a good run of being the man from like mid '80s to like mid '90s. He was the man. That's a good run.
That was kind of his genre. Is like that kind of sleazy like crime, you know. Like that was kind of his thing, right?
Well, yes and no. I mean, Romancing the Stone, he's not sleazy, but he's a good leading man.
Right.
Um, you get to Wall Street, he's kind of sleazy. You know, like
Gecko.
it,
Yeah.
it kind of changes. I just think he was a great actor, man. You know, great in a lot of cool movies. Like he would make movies better with his presence. I would have to say.
No, I'm
Yeah.
definitely a fan. I'm just running through the films that I remember seeing him in, and they all have this
Okay.
kind of sleaze like element to it. Well, that
No, I could get that.
yeah,
I could see that.
it's totally fine though. Totally fine. I back it. I don't have a problem with that.
And then he does Falling Down in '93, an
Oh yeah,
amazing movie. And, you know, I forget something else he did a little later on in the '90s that I liked. But yeah, definitely one of my faves. Um, but yeah, folks, Alice, Sweet Alice, Patterson, New Jersey. Any Patterson, New Jersey listeners, let us know if we did right by the town.
I think I'm gonna watch Trouble Every Day tonight, man. After
Yes,
yeah,
Trouble Every Day, listeners. A little subliminal messaging.
yeah.
It's a pretty sick movie. It definitely belongs with that crew that it's up there with. You know, the Insides and the Martyrs and the Frontier, and it's in there, but it's a bit more. I don't know. Shall I say? It's in a lot of ways not as OTT as those movies, but in its own way it is. You know,
Definitely, it's different.
it's quieter.
Yeah, it's
It's a
quieter.
quieter
Yeah,
movie.
it's
Yes.
it features Vince Gallo in that
Mhm.
with this incredible mustache in that movie.
Yes. New York City's own Vincent Gallo. Yes.
Speaking of which, a couple of movies I'm looking forward to, man. That there's a new movie that Gallo is in that looks really good.
Oh, he hasn't done anything in ages. What is it?
Ah, fuck. Jeff sent me the trailer, man. I just said that. Now I can't remember the name of it. But it's a movie that Vincent Gallo is in.
Mm-hmm.
That's like he plays like this. It's a horror thriller type film.
Oh, okay. I'm looking up his IMDb now. Is it called Shut In?
That's it. Yes,
Ooh,
shut
okay.
in. Yeah,
Okay.
and
Oh.
I saw the trailer and he looks awesome. Like still that very intense like vibe that he has.
Well, Rainey Qualley is in it. I'm wondering, is this Margaret Qualley from what do you call it? Her sister? Because it looks just like her. I think it might be. Yeah, she is. Margaret Qualley from, what do you call it? Oh my God, our favorite movie of 2019. I'm having such a brain fart right now. Tarantino. Once Upon a Time in
Once Upon a
Hollywood.
Time in Hollywood. Yeah,
Played Pussycat in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Yeah, she's quite the looker, like her sister. This actress. So yeah, I'll be seeing this movie. Yeah.
And there's also
Great
that
quality.
other one, X, that you sent me the trailer for. I'm looking forward to that one too.
Yeah. It's an A24 film. Ty West directed it. It looks like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but they were shooting a porn movie instead of just, out on the road. That's what it looks like. I mean, it looks pretty wild.
It's got that Foghat song in it too, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah. But it's got super old school OG Texas vibes. Didn't you get that vibe as well?
100%. Yeah.
From even like the house that they go to like the traveling, and very Texas inspired. Hey, if we're going to see more movies that are inspired by that great movie, then I have no beef, as long as the movies are good. But yeah, I'm going to watch this Shut-In trailer after we're done tonight. Sounds interesting. Yeah, there's probably some other stuff I'm kind of brain farting on as far as like new horror. But I will say I have jumped in on Archive 81. I watched the first 2 episodes, and I like it. I will say this. It's not a show for dummies, Mike Hill. Would you agree?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot going on there.
There's a lot going on. You can't watch this show. You can't watch it with, I'm going to do something else and put this on in the background. This is not the show for you if that's what you're going to do.
Well,
you need to pay attention to the show, right?
Oh yeah. You have to. It's dense, and
dense.
And I'm going to say that the film is heavily Lovecraft inspired, and similar to Lovecraft's fiction, it's dense.
Okay.
And you have to pay attention.
Well, 2 episodes in, to me, it's super Lovecrafty already to me. I mean, it's, but it's also like, I don't know. I sometimes I feel like I throw this around when it might not be appropriate, but it's got a little X-Files vibe.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. Okay, I thought it did. I mean, not a lot of shows do. So I feel like when I say that, I like to think it applies because I don't think many shows have that vibe.
Yeah.
But yeah, it seems like smart horror to a degree.
Just complicated.
Complicated. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a complexity to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I dig it so far. I will let you know on my progress because I know you really liked it.
Yeah, I did. Real quick before I forget, I want to shout out Retta Evans on this because she actually reminded us that we should do this film. Alice,
awesome!
Alice. Yeah, she was like, "I'd like to hear you guys do it," because I think we did mention this once before.
Mm-hmm.
So she's like behind us, behind me,
cool.
kind of bringing this up again. So yeah, thanks.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that's very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, listeners, let us know what you thought of this episode. Of course, please, if you're a brand new listener, if this is your first Necromaniacs, welcome aboard. Make sure you're subscribing so you're hitting every episode every Thursday, right, Mike?
That's right. And, follow us on Instagram and Facebook and all those places.
Yes, indeed. All right. We will see you all next time. Please be safe out there, everybody. Cheers.
Take care, everyone, and talk to you next week.
Bye-bye.
I got the image of Jesus embedded in my chest. I can't live home without my bulletproof vest. Killing myself for the perfect honeymoon. Fighting with scorpion tied around my neck. I hear the pitter patter of a killer on the loose. Children use their fingers to set up words. Crosses on our temples on Slaughter Avenue. It takes too much time for me to say all this view. Time is digging graves for the children dig the graves of me and you. Stop the illness I prescribe the cure. Such a 2-day life on a 2-day vacation. Got the